see us? And if so, please just raise your hand in order to make sure that we have all of you with us. You see the raising the hand sign in the top bar. Okay, and I see a lot of raising the hand signs. That's great. So it's great to have all of you with us today. Thanks so much for joining our first webinar by the World Evangelical Alliance Sustainability Center in cooperation with the Creation Care Task Force, also by the World Evangelical Alliance. And we have some people who still encounter technical problems, unfortunately, including our speaker Iyad, but I just see that he wrote an email that he is there, but he can't hear anyone. Iyad, it might be the case that you have to enable your speaker and your microphone in the top bar. So maybe Lily, you can make sure that Iyad can also hear us and see us. So without further ado, we want to start now because we have spent some minutes working on technical issue. I want to welcome you to the webinar, the 4th UN Environment Assembly, the Faith for Earth Initiative, and Creation Care. So a warm welcome from our side. As Lillian, our head of programs, is currently in Bethlehem in Palestine territories, she also encounters some technical problems. So I will take over from her for the moderation part and for the introduction and Q&As in the final part of this webinar. So by the way, you can also lower your hand again now. Maybe you need it later on, so we can remove these signs here. So I just want to quickly run through our agenda for today. We have welcome and introduction. That's the part we are in right now. We will have a short overview of the 4th UN Environment Assembly delivered by me as a second part. Then we have Iyad with us, Iyad Abou-Mogli. He is working for United Nations Environment Program in Nairobi. It's a great honor and privilege to have you with us, Iyad, and he coordinates the Faith for Earth initiative. That's the strategic engagement by UNEP with faith-based organizations. And we're looking forward to your part and your presentation. And as a final presentation, we have Dr. Chris Elisara with us. He is not only head of the Creation Care Task Force of the World Evangelical Alliance, but also my associate director for the Sustainability Center by the WEA in Bonn. And he joins us from San Diego in California. And Chris, a very warm thank you to you, because I think it must be around 4 o'clock in the morning where you are at the moment. So you really had some challenges joining us, but we are all the more happy to have you with us. So we want to directly start with the first presentation, and I'm gonna run you through some basics concerning the 4th meeting of the UN Environment Assembly. And I have prepared some information for you. You can type in some questions that you have in the chat box down here. And before we start, we just want to let you know that we will record this webinar in order to make it available for people who cannot join us today. And we do not have the time to have questions after each presentation, but we have time to collectively answer the questions in the end after the third and final presentation by Chris. If that's okay for everyone and everyone can hear us and see us, if not, just let us know through the chat box. I will start with some general points on the UN Environment Assembly and its 4th session. It will take place from 11th to 15 March 2019 in Nairobi in Kenya. And the UN Environment Assembly is the world's highest level decision-making body on the topic of environment and on all environmental issues. It brings together governments, entrepreneurs, activists, and others. And as you may well know, but some of you do not, UN Environment Assembly is called together by the current acting executive director of the United Nations Environment Program at the level of Assistant Secretary General, which is at the moment a Tanzanian lady by the name of Joyce Msuya. She's a microbiologist and environmental scientist, and she was appointed by Antonio Guterres as the acting executive director of UNEP on 15th August of 2018, following the resignation of Eric Solheim. Maybe he was well known to you, and Joyce isn't so far, but you've heard this now once. I copied in a statement by Siim Kiisler, president of UN Environment Assembly. Siim Kiisler currently is the Minister for the Environment of Estonia. He's the first Estonian to have this special role of presiding over UN Environment Assembly. And he said this historic assembly, with its theme on innovative solutions to environmental challenges and sustainable consumption and production, will give us the framework for shifting our global economic system towards more sustainable trajectories that tackle our environmental challenges and bring us closer to the future we want. And he obviously refers to the outcome document of the 2012 United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development when he says the future we want. So the goals of the fourth UNEA are to share ideas and commit to action. As always, it's a big festival of ideas, many actors coming together, and to really ambitiously scale up efforts to tackle common environmental challenges through, firstly, fostering sustainable and efficient resource management. Secondly, ensuring the access and use of environmental data. That's a big focus of the fourth UN Environment Assembly. And finally, engaging civil society, citizens, private sector, and academia. And we would add to that also, obviously, faith-based organizations. The theme of the fourth United Nations Environment Assembly is innovative solutions for environmental challenges and sustainable consumption and production. And the whole focus is really of this on this topic of innovation. So Siim Kiisler talks about a culture of innovation. What does it include? The key features are creativity, openness, and participation. Only by this you can create this culture of innovation. And if we talk about innovation, it's really meant in the broadest sense of the word, not limited to technology alone, but rather a mindset or an enabling culture accessible to all countries and all organizations alike. This also includes streamlining and simplifying processes and removing barriers to act as an enabler of innovation. So it's not only about doing different things, but also about doing things differently. I think that's a very catchy phrase, and we can measure both the program and also the final results against this ambition. A culture of innovation cuts across sectors and actors and ensures the right to participation. That's crucial for a culture of innovation. The required conditions really are leadership and governance instruments that reward innovation and circularity while stimulating openness and collaboration. Education and continuous capacity building that facilitate the transition to a knowledge society. And finally, the dedication of finance and technology to sustainability. And also, finally, the fourth point is unleashing the creativity and entrepreneurship of women, obviously. So this is a crucial part that is also mentioned at many stages in the conference documents preparing the fourth UNEA. The whole UNEA is settled upon a basement of reference to the SDGs and Agenda 2030. So we have this idea of leaving no one behind, also incorporated in the whole conference setup. So it's a guiding principle in promoting a culture of innovation. It means a holistic, inclusive, and participatory approach to development. It means that it's underpinned by, or has to be underpinned by, human rights, that It recognizes interlinkages and the integrated nature of the 2030 Agenda and Sustainable Development. And the three areas of focus that are below the overarching conference theme are tackling the environmental challenges related to poverty and natural resources management, including sustainable food systems, food security, and halting biodiversity loss. The second area of focus is introducing life cycle approaches to resource efficiency, energy, chemicals, and waste management. And the third area of focus is ensuring sustainable business development at a time of rapid technological change. So to give you an idea of how the UNEA is structured, I brought you some aspects about the calendar of the main events. So we will have, before the actual UNEA, the open-ended committee of permanent representatives. So that's all the permanent representatives in Nairobi. So people from the different member states who are representing their member states at UNEP, they are coming together discussing the outcome documents. Then we will have on 7th and 8th of March the Global Major Groups and Stakeholders Forum, which is a very important point for interaction with civil society and with other actors that are represented in the major groups. So this is also the place where different various faith-based organizations will interact and contribute their views and perspectives. Then we have the Science Policy and Business Forum on 9th and 10th of March. It is the second Science Policy and Business Forum. This time it is attached to a UNEA, and it contributes solutions really coming from the business side, solutions that were developed in the science world, and also some ideas stemming from the policy side. Then the actual UN Environment Assembly from 11th to 15th of March. In this assembly, or as part of the assembly, how does it work? We have regional group meetings and so-called bureau meetings. Then there is, in the first part of the week, the UNEA Committee of the Whole. So the whole assembly will meet together. Then in the second part of the week, there will be national statements. Then we have obviously the side events, and we will come back to that later when we talk about our own little side event that we hold during the week. And we have receptions in the evenings, several receptions. We have a city summit, and we have a One Planet summit. So that's also nothing new. The One Planet summit has been there before, and there will be another celebration then in Nairobi in March. So you can't really read this, but I just wanted to show this slide to you to give you an idea of how the calendar of this week, or you have to say the 2 weeks actually in Nairobi, looks like. So just some quotations taken from the draft Ministerial Declaration of the 2019 UNEA to give you a general idea of the direction that the final outcome documents will probably take. So this statement reads, "We are dedicated to moving towards sustainable, prosperous, and inclusive societies with sustainable consumption and production patterns that prevent and address environmental challenges with innovative solutions." So the whole focus is really on the words innovation and those innovative solutions. And UNEA really gathers this year to talk about how can we transform societies to become more sustainable when it comes to our consumption and production matters. Creative approaches and innovative solutions, that's what I just said. And our planet, this is also very important as a background. There is the clear statement that our planet is increasingly polluted, rapidly warming, and quickly losing its biodiversity. So another big stream or another big topic, obviously, is the topic of biodiversity. And in the Ministerial Declaration, there's also a statement that by the next UNEA, there will be a framework for biodiversity, or for the protection of biodiversity, that is following the current framework that we're having right now. Yeah, widespread unsustainable use of natural resources. That's really the problem against which we are meeting and we are discussing solutions. So as the final part of my presentation, to give you an idea what UNEA really is and what the topics are, I want to quickly run through the intended actions that are listed in the draft document for the Ministerial Declaration. So you get an idea of how widespread the actual approaches are to live up to these ambitions. So improve national resource management strategies. That's a big focus. Achieve a resource efficient and circular economy. That's especially important for some of our participants when we talk about a circular economy, and also how faith-based organizations can link into that. Foster opportunities for the innovative substitution of hazardous substances in material cycles with the aim of achieving safe and non-toxic material flows. Promote sustainable food systems by implementing sustainable agricultural practices, improving value generation and addressing food security, environmental health, and human well-being in an integrated manner. Implement sustainable land and soil management measures, including afforestation, wetland and landscape restoration to combat desertification, deforestation, and soil pollution, biodiversity loss, and to improve climate change mitigation and adaptation. Harmonize international environmental data standards. Support the development of a global environmental data strategy by 2025. So there's also a big focus on data, and at the same time, this speaks to us. To what extent are we able to handle data? To what extent are we knowledgeable about how to access environmental data and to process it and to transform it into reports that are really informing the public and to translate it into real action. So that's something we can take from here. Improve environmental monitoring systems. Support the development of national environmental data management capacities. Work towards ensuring transparency of and open access to environmental data. That's exactly the point. Work towards defining appropriate and ambitious national targets for reducing waste generation, increasing the reuse of products, and recycling of waste by 2025. Decisively address the damage to our ecosystems caused by the unsustainable use and disposal of single-use plastic products, including by phasing out most problematic single-use plastic products as early as 2025. Support the efforts to develop global product sustainability and circularity criteria by 2025. Set ambitious national targets on the use of sustainable public procurements to stimulate demand for environmentally sound products, processes, and services. Encourage the disclosure of product information to customers and to communities. Promote the development of solutions with special emphasis on digital solutions to increase transparency in product chains. And the final slide, invest in environmental education in the framework of sustainable development with a strong gender focus, and to promote a wider use of innovative approaches such as inclusive citizen science and social innovation programs, and the promotion and incentivization of new eco-innovative business models. To advocate the wider application of indigenous traditional knowledge about environmentally friendly practices for more sustainable economies and resilient societies. And this really, to be honest, is the only part in the whole outcome document or the Ministerial Declaration that, from my point of view, at least goes in the direction of mentioning faith-based actors or worldview or religion. So this mentioning of indigenous traditional knowledge. Accelerate sustainable and innovative financing opportunities and solutions, and ministers commit to build innovative partnerships to unlock new capital for sustainable investments. And improve good practices of engagement to ensure the meaningful involvement of civil society, citizens, private sector, and academia in the policy-making process. So to make this a little bit more specific, This is obviously just the declaration that will be published in the end. There's a background report by the acting executive director of UNEP that gives a little bit more information. We put the link in here, and so you're able to access it. And I just have taken out of it a few comments that I thought I want to highlight for you. Governments and regulators must pay increased attention to the rules of the game governing financial and capital markets. So there's really an awareness for that, how financial markets actually shape the whole playing field, also when it comes to environmental action. The principles for responsible banking are mentioned. Promoting standardization of environmental products and services are mentioned because the problem was mentioned that most of the time you have small applications or small solutions when it comes to products and services, but it's really hard to apply them on a large scale, and only then they really have a global impact. And the broader adoption of smart, frugal innovations that could have a substantial positive environmental impact with very limited investments. So these are just some points that hopefully give you an idea of what UNEA will be about and what topics are discussed there and what probably the intended actions will be that flow out of this huge conference, which will take place in Nairobi in March. And somebody asked the question, who will go there? Who will be attending? Well, it's really the environment ministers of this world. We don't have the final list who will actually be there, but it's going to be definitely the delegations from each and every country, and then obviously all of the major stakeholder groups, be it business, science, policy side, NGOs, and also faith-based organizations. And that's actually the end of my presentation, and at the same time a good link to the next presentation, which will be delivered by Iyad Abomogli from UNEP, and we are very happy to have him with us. And Lily, are you preparing to have him now present the second presentation? And all of your questions, thanks for them. They are taken note of, and I hope we will have time in the end to come back to them. So thanks for the moment from my side.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Yes, yeah, we can hear you.
Hello, Iyad. Now it
Hi,
works.
can you see me? Or you don't want to see me?
No,
Not yet.
you should, in the upper part, there's this button next to the microphone where you have to connect your webcam.
Right. Okay.
And then you also have to click Start
Okay.
Sharing.
On.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, now we can see you. It's
All
great.
right.
Thanks, Iyad, for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. It's my pleasure. And thank you, Matthias.
Sorry, Iyad, your voice is very low.
Very low.
Your voice is very low.
I
Can you try?
almost. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
this is
Okay.
better.
I'm biting it now. Right. So, so thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to always be with you, especially after the cold weather in Bonn a couple of weeks ago. I am now enjoying the warmth of Nairobi, and I will, of course, welcome you in 2 weeks' time to enjoy with me the weather and the heat of the discussions. So thank you, Matthias, for a very excellent and comprehensive introduction on UNEA. You've done it much more better than how I would have done it. So thank you very much for the details. If I can compliment a few things before I start my presentation, UNEA 4 is why it is 4. It is the fourth session after the Governing Council has become a universal membership. We used to call it the Governing Council, and we had 27 sessions before, so this would be the 31st session of our Governing Council. But since it has become a universal membership now, this is the fourth session, and it is usually held every 2 years. However, in the past 3 or 4 years, we had it almost on a yearly basis, just to have the universal membership, but also there was a discussion on whether to have it on odd years or even years. So there was a necessity to have it consecutively for 3 years until now. It is on odd years. One bit of new information, the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, has nominated Ms. Inger Anderson as the new incoming Executive Director of UNEP. So it's a matter of few days until she is officially announced as the new Executive Director. I am not sure if she's going to be presiding over UNEA when she comes. She will be there, but I think she will still be coming as the Director General of IUCN. So this is a great addition. I have known Inger for the past 25 years, and she's an excellent leader, an excellent manager, an excellent global figure. So I have very high hopes of her leadership. In addition to the events that Matthias mentioned, this year, and it's the first year ever, we will have a dedicated side events or a consolidation of side events specifically on Faith for Earth, which is the engagement of faith-based organizations on environmental issues. And we are organizing 12 specific side events and 3 more contributing to, as speakers in other side events. So this is huge. So far, we have 52 speakers from faith-based organizations who will be joining us and representing 46 faith-based organizations, and currently we have 100 registered participants from faith-based organizations. And believe it or not, some organizations are coming with huge delegations exceeding 10 people in some cases. So quickly, as I mentioned, we are going to have 10 side events specifically focusing on faith and environment, and organized by different faith organizations like the World Evangelical Alliance, of course, the World Council of Churches, the Parliament of World Religions, the Youth Network for Environmental Sustainability, Brahma Kumaris, the Buddhist Foundation, and many others, including our own Faith for Earth initiative and the Interfaith Rainforest initiative. So this is huge. I am exceedingly ecstatic about it and very happy. As I mentioned, there are 52 speakers, and so the richness of the contributions will very much add value to whatever faith-based organizations have been doing over the years. These presentations will be made available to everybody and will contribute to the knowledge sharing and sharing of expertise and success stories as well. So why are we doing this? And I will start with my presentation. In 2017, we launched the engagement with faith-based organizations, and in January 2018, we launched the what we call the Earth strategy for engaging with faith-based organizations. And the reason is, Matthias touched upon some of these reasons why we have decided to go forward and engage faith-based organizations. Well, I mean, the motto for Agenda 2030 is leave no one behind. But it's not only leave no one behind in terms of development, but also in terms of participation in decision-making and implementation and achievement of the SDGs and Agenda 2030. So it was obvious for us that if we continue the business as usual, we will be leaving behind the mass expertise and experience and work of faith-based organizations, not only on environmental issues, but also on general developmental issues. So we're taking the partnership with faith-based organizations as an innovative approach, actually, to bring in like-minded people in contributing to the Agenda 2030. As Matthias mentioned, there are innovative approaches out there, but they are small. So we need to scale up. We cannot continue having small initiatives here and there. It has to be at a scale that is globally impactful and effective. As everybody knows, we're in a environmentally challenging situation at the global level. We have so many challenges in front of us. One of them, but not the only one, is climate change, and everybody's talking about how many years we have left to exceed the 1.5 degrees centigrade, where major impact will affect the way on Earth as we know it. So acceleration is a must. We need to employ all the innovative approaches that are out there to accelerate the achievement and scale them up. We also need transformational attitude and transformational actions that would not be a one-time off, but will change the way we do things. Of course, or to meet the aspirations of everyone in continuing the path towards sustainable development. And that needs to be inclusive. We should not leave anybody behind, whether developing or developed countries, especially on environmental issues. We know that developed countries actually suffer from environmental degradation more than developing countries who suffer from the impact of environmental degradation. And all of that must be done or in an ethical way. This is why we're trying to introduce the values, the ethics, the morality of doing things, and change the behaviors of the people. So we would be transformational in changing behaviors and attitudes, but also transformational in changing the way we approach sustainable development. The next slide actually shows why or what is the size of faith-based organizations in terms of their economic power. And it is a known science now that faith-based organizations are, or investment bodies, are the fourth largest investment group on the face of Earth. So they own trillions of dollars, they deal with trillions of dollars in terms of development projects, whether building streets or hospitals or schools or providing charity or dealing with even industries and so on. So this economic power cannot be overlooked, and we should work with them directly. Some of the example statistics is that 50% of schools worldwide are owned by faith-based organizations. In terms of natural resources, and if we go specifically to forest, 28% of forest in Austria, for example, is owned or are owned by faith-based organizations. The rate of investment in the US over the past 10 years has increased by 3,500%, from 500 million to 17 billion dollars. So we're talking about massive economic activity by faith-based organizations. Now the next slide would show us why we're engaging. First of all, environmental issues are the issues that are mostly in common between the different faiths. So if you consider Christianity, Buddhism, Judaism, Islam, what have you, you would find that all of them call for caring for Earth, for the creation, for natural resources, whether it is the creation of God or it is given by whatever faith believe the source of natural resources on Earth. So there is this commonality between faith, so it is not a controversial issue that will prevent different faiths to cooperate and coordinate with one another to achieve the common goal, which is protecting our only planet Earth. Again, going to the volume or size of investment, as I mentioned before, largest investors, and everybody's talking about financing for sustainable development as part of the Addis Ababa Action Agenda. So this size and volume of investment, we cannot overlook trillions of dollars being invested by the faith-based organizations.
Yeah, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. Can you speak up a little bit more? Again, some participants have difficulty hearing you.
Okay, I will put the microphone inside of my
Sorry.
mouth. All right. I hope this is better. So also working with
Yes,
this
that's
organization
fine.
has
Thank you.
been approved by the General Assembly, and there is a General Assembly resolution for engaging with faith-based organizations and taking faith and belief as major issues that the international community has to pay attention to. We know that there have already been so many work and interventions by faith-based organizations on environmental issues. So there is a network, but we believe that this network needs a network of networks, and this is why we're at the UN we're decided to create such a platform for the international faith community to come together and be one voice in UN conferences and with decisions and resolutions adopted by member states and governments. So we need all efforts to be known. We need to have a voice at the decision-making table. So this is why we're bringing all these prominent faith-based organizations to be and to engage and to discuss with decision-makers their approaches, their concerns, their advices, and so on. For this purpose, if you go to the slide on the strategic goals of the initiative, we have adopted three goals. The first one is to empower, inform, inspire, encourage, work with faith-based organizations and faith leaders. We need the voices of faith leaders to be heard on environmental issues as much as they are heard on other issues of global concern. So this is why we're working with all faith leaders from different faiths to speak the same language of the need to protect our earth. The second goal, which speaks to the economic power of faith organizations, and we need to introduce the new sustainable development concept and principles into the investment criteria of faith-based organizations, because historically these criteria were targeting anything against the beliefs of the faith. For example, no alcohol production, no tobacco, no pornography, and so on and so forth. But we need to introduce the positive impact criteria where faith-based organizations, when they invest in an industry, they make sure that they are contributing to sustainable development and taking all environmental issues into concern. And the third one is where we are trying to link science and faith teachings, where we are not debating science, we're not debating faith, but we are connecting what both the science community and the faith community agree on. For example, we all agree that climate change is a threat to everybody. So we need to bring in what faith organizations or faith script talk about climate change and how this is backed up by scientific evidence. We also need to bring the scientific evidence and reporting in a language that is understood by faith followers. So we're not talking to only the elites or the knowledgeable, but we want to reach everybody in the international community. So what we expect, the following slide shows that what we are hoping to establish is a global coalition. We're calling it the Faith for Earth Coalition, where we provide this space for policy dialogue with decision makers and among faith leaders. We want to introduce working with faith organizations as a strategic approach to our own program and projects, where each program and project considers involving faith organizations into the implementation of our program of work and what we call the midterm strategy. Then one of the outcomes is related to the greening principles, the inclusive economic principles, introduction into or integration into the faith investment. And of course, we want to provide the knowledge platform where either the existing knowledge from the different faith organizations. I know there are tremendous amount of knowledge that is out there, but it is not easily available to everybody from different faiths or even from followers. So we would want to provide such a platform and provide the knowledge, the scientific knowledge that the UN environment produces in a language that everybody understands. An example of the integration on the following slide, and this is how we are mapping actually all of the SDGs, because our aim is to contribute to achieving the SDGs. So this is taking one of the SDGs, which is on sustainable consumption production, which is the theme of UNEA 4, and the corresponding existing environment, UN environment project or initiatives like Clean Seas, the 10-year framework on a platform, the UNEA Finance Initiative, the Green Economy, UN-RED, and so on and so forth, and how these would be useful for faith-based organizations. So if we talk about energy efficiency, for example, how enhancing efficiency in worship places would contribute to achieving this goal. If we talk about waste reduction and utilization of waste as a resource, then we need to know how food banks managed by faith-based organizations can be established, or the established one can contribute to achieving this goal. So different initiatives would have different components that can be contributed by faith-based organizations. So what we're trying to achieve in 2019, at least for the coalition to be constituted, needs the charter to be written, the rules of procedure, the membership, and so on. And of course, continue the dialogue. This is the first time that the faith community will be meeting in UNEA. So hopefully the faith-based organizations will adopt a policy or propose to the UNEA Bureau that this becomes a tradition in UN Environmental Assembly meetings, that a dedicated space for faith leaders to meet and discuss their contribution and their role in the decision-making system of UN environment. So this is in brief what we're trying to do, and I am very happy to meet all of you. I am sure that I've seen some comments on the comment board that some of you will be attending, and I'm sure a lot more of faith leaders will be part of the discussion. So looking forward to meet each and every one of you. Thank you, and over from my side. Hello, do I need to mute?
So thanks very much. That was very interesting, I think, from a perspective survival program and to engage faith-based actors. And now we will go to the other side, to a faith-based actor, and I'm very happy to welcome Chris Elizara, who is the director of the Creation Care Task Force of the World Evangelical Alliance, and he will explain to us some priorities in the area of creation care from an evangelical perspective. So I hope technically everything works. Chris?
Hi, can you hear me?
Us?
I can hear you fine.
Yes. Okay, great. We can also see you. So over to you, Chris. Thanks for being with us.
It's great to be here. It's a little early here in San Diego, Southern California, but I'm so glad to be here. I see a few friends here. Hi, Dave, and some folks I'm looking forward to meeting, like Ken and Marsh from South Africa. So I'm just going to go very briefly through the creation care priorities that the WEA has as a faith-based actor, and will be attending the UNEA. And so if you can go to the next slide, I want to mention that our primary focus for us is always going to be on the church and discipleship, and creating Christians who are able to care for creation robustly, fully, from a a place of faith, a place of faith commitment, both individually and as a community, as a church. And so we're going to be developing, obviously, biblical resources, programs, and opportunities for the church. And we do this with partners, which I'll get to in a little bit. But I just want to mention 3 examples of some of the core things that we're working on this year. The first one is the 2023 initiative, and that's focused on clean, renewable energy for evangelicals worldwide, and especially those in priority countries, Africa, India, and other places like that. The initiative is essentially a commitment by the WEA and partners to move 20% of the global evangelical footprint to clean, renewable energy by the year 2023. And so that global footprint is churches, hospitals, schools, clinics, and also households converting to clean, renewable energy. So the 2023 initiative is all about that. And we'll be rolling that out over this next year. We're working right now in Uganda and trying to get that as a demonstration together, Nigeria, and also here in the United States. Another project I'll mention is Living the Change. Living the Change is a campaign based around faith-consistent creation care lifestyles, things that we do day in and day out that have an impact on climate change. And we're working in three key areas. That is diet, energy, and transportation. So that's another campaign, and you can learn about that. We'll send links to folks. And then we also have another campaign. It's coming along. It's brand new, and it's focused on waste, and a plastic campaign with the Plastic Bank and Renew Our World. So Plastic Bank is going to be partnering with us to reduce plastic waste, and Renew Our World is developing a waste campaign as well. So those are just some examples. We're working on other church-based programs as well. So next slide talks about the fact that we have to collaborate and partner with lots of other institutions and organizations within the evangelical world. So I just mentioned some of those. Micah Global, Renew Our World, which is a campaign pulled together, spearheaded by Tear Fund, and then Arusha. And the things about the partners and the collaboration is that, there are so many different areas. The WEA can't specialize in all areas, so we've actually selected a few. But Arusha, for example, specializes in biodiversity and conservation, and so we support and partner with them. So we will work with and collaborate with other partners. And as the next slide will explain, we do focus, as I mentioned, on some particular areas. And so one of the areas of focus is on sustainable urbanism. And one of the most important areas for creation care that everybody's life overlaps with biodiversity, ecosystems, water, clean water, energy, and so on, is where we live. So if we can focus on making our cities and towns, villages sustainable, then we've done a lot to work towards caring for God's creation. So we work with another partner, which is the Urban Shalom Society, and then at the UN Habitat is one of our key partners. And so we are working this year to put together multiple UN Habitat Urban Thinkers campuses, and leading up to the 10th World Urban Forum in Abu Dhabi in 2020. So another partnership, if you go to the next slide, is in this whole area that Iyad has been talking about, and that is in faith-consistent investing. And so over the last couple of years, the WEA and other partners have been developing an organization called Faith Invest, and basically it's been mentioned, we're the fourth largest investor in the world. So if we can positively invest our resources in creation care and the Sustainable Development Goals, that is going to help achieve some of the desires we have to care for creation. But we have to get our financing instruments organized. And that's what Faith Invest is. And Faith Cities is about investing in cities, investing in people in cities, city infrastructure, resilience, and so on and so forth. So Faith Cities is another investment sector of Faith Invest. And we work with multiple partners in Faith Invest and Faith Cities. In the next slide, we talk about a development that has occurred in the last year, and that is the WEA Sustainability Center in Bonn, with Matthias and I are leading. Matthias being in Bonn and is the director of the center. So we will further develop the Sustainability Center. And the next slide talks about a key partnership, and the logo is in the top right-hand corner of the slide there. That's the Lausanne WEA Creation Care Network, or the LWCCN. The LWCCN has had a global campaign for the last several years, organizing regional creation care conferences. And so the LWCCN currently reaches creation care leaders in 130 countries and at about 1,500 members. And so that global campaign comes to an end this year with the 11th and the 12th regional conference. The 11th being in Eastern Europe and the 12th being in the Middle East, North Africa. And that's where we convene regional creation care leaders from the Evangelical Church and organizations in that region to come together, to learn together, to collaborate together. And then we, as I said, that's come together, but we have now a network, a global network that is working together to do things. And the next slide, we'll talk about a few of the other projects that the Lausanne WA Creation Care Network is involved with. And our colleague who worked with Dave Bookless, who was listening to this webinar, but another colleague here from Lausanne is, and Dave, by the way, is with Russia. My other colleague, Ed Brown, is with Lausanne, and he will be going to the Global Workplace Forum and doing a couple of presentations there. And on the next slide, we have developed a collaboration in environmental missions at the Frontier Ventures, used to be called the Center for World Mission, but developing an educational platform, again, in terms of discipleship, in terms of mission focused on creation care with Frontier Ventures. And we had an inaugural conference last year in Pasadena, and we'll continue to have conferences on environmental mission, and we're also developing other programs, a leadership program for attending the COPs and developing younger leaders to be able to engage from evangelical faith to engage with COPs and climate change issues and actions. And so, that's just a brief overview of what the WEA's priorities are for this year, and an expose of some of the partners that we work with. And then I'm going to turn it back to Matthias now, just to talk about how we also now see the collaboration with the WEA and the UNEA collaborating together on the platform that's Faith to Earth. And so I'll turn it back over to you, Matthias. We're really excited about going to Nairobi, Matthias and I, and developing ways in which we can further walk forward with Faith for Earth at the UNEA.
Thanks so much, Chris. Very fascinating. 5 o'clock in the morning, as we've heard in San Diego. So thanks so much for joining us and giving us these insights. So I just want to give you 3 more points on our involvement in United Nations Environment Assembly in Nairobi in Kenya in March. So as Chris has said, we will be there together hosting a side event which is titled Advancing Climate Justice with Faith-Based Renewable Energy Projects, in collaboration with the Interfaith Center for Sustainable Development from Jerusalem and a local Kenyan organization doing farmer development programs in rural areas in rural Kenya, which is called Jitokeze Wamama Wafrika. So this will be on Monday, 11th March 2019 in the Faith for Earth program that Iyad had just mentioned. The next thing is just a general thought, Iyad, and we also want to communicate that into your direction, as I've read through the Ministerial declaration and as we've heard your points concerning the Faith for Earth initiative. Wouldn't it be an interesting point to actually have FBOs mentioned in the outcome documents at one point or at one stage? I don't know where it could be best. I think I found a point where it says under the point O, we will improve good practices of engagement to ensure the meaningful involvement of civil society, citizens, private sector, and academia in the policy-making process. And as we have this specific focus on Faith for Earth with this UNEA, it may be a beautiful idea to include a reference to FBOs at this stage. Then, obviously, as Chris has said, we also want to showcase the variety of contributions of Christian churches and organizations to global sustainability efforts, as we are representing the WEA and also together with our partners that were just mentioned in Nairobi. And the last point really is to also take some critical matters or some specific topics with us to Nairobi and to UNEA. So I had the great chance to spend 1 week in Ghana just recently, where I also met Emmanuel Turkson, who's on this webinar, and he did a great job in facilitating a variety of meetings that were all concerned with the Save Atua Forest issue. So Atua Forest is a forest in Ghana that is at threat at the moment of being turned into a massive bauxite mine by giving a concession to a Chinese company. And that's really creation care at its best, where there needs to be some Christians and who really speak out and combine forces in order to make this message known to the public and also carry it to the international and global levels. And so if we can play a little role here by carrying this to the UNEA and letting the Ghanaian representatives at UNEA know about evangelicals worldwide who care for this matter and who know about Atua Forest, although they are not from Ghana, then I think some of our role has already been fulfilled that Chris just talked about. So these are just 4 points I wanted to mention as a final statement here. And Lily, I hand over to you now.
Yes, thank you very much, Matthias. We will start our Q&A session now. I have seen in the chat already many questions, and so in this window now you can see either in the chat box you can post your questions, or in the upper box you can also post your questions, and please always say who you address the question to, and then they can answer your question. And if you want to say something, you can raise your hand, and we will give you the opportunity to speak. So let's see.
Lily, maybe I can come in at this stage again because I think Dave has already mentioned a question. I copy it in here once again for everyone to see. I don't know if everyone can see, but Dave said, as Matthias mentioned, the official UNEA documents have almost nothing about how we achieve behavioral change and addressing the levers and values behind this. And I think that's more or less not really a question, but a point to think about. That this is actually where FBOs come in and are very important because they are addressing the levers and the values behind behavioral change. So just to get this discussion started, I think this is a good thought by you, Dave. Thanks so much. And if there are any other thoughts about this, you can add to this. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Matthias. We have one.
Rachel has raised her hand.
Rachel has raised her hand.
I will enable your microphone, Rachel, and then
you can speak.
Rachel?
Rachel?
We're not hearing you.
We're not hearing
Maybe you can type the question, and I will.
Maybe you can type the question, and I will take another question.
Yeah, yes, please.
Yeah, yes, please.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
I wanted to come in on the issue of the inclusion of values and behaviors into the outcome document or whatever other documents. In fact, this is indeed the forum to do so. It has to be done according to the rules and procedures of UNEA, which will allow you in two occasions to do so. The first one during the stakeholders and measure groups meeting, which will take place, I think, the 7th and 8th or 6th and 7th, and I believe Matthias will be there. Now, everybody in that meeting, whether accredited or not accredited, will attend the measures of stakeholders. But only accredited organizations like UNEA now has accreditation. They can make recommendations and present papers and advice. So if you believe that there is a strong case for this, WEA could present the case on behalf of other state organizations. As I mentioned, probably in different occasions, you have now 27 faith-based organizations that are accredited. So you have a major voice there. The second occasion, which is during the discussion of the high-level segment between 11 and 15. Again, there is some rules of engagement that only accredited organizations will be able to attend these discussions with ministers. And it is not everybody who is accredited will be able to make presentations or have the door to make a statement. That will have to be determined by your meeting during the major group stakeholders, because we have more than 400 accredited NGOs, civil society organizations, academia, and so on. So usually they agree on who would be making a statement on behalf of accredited organizations. So if you succeed in making the point during the major group stakeholders and have it limited in their contribution to the high-level segment, that would be the best way to go about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Iyad. Yes, very good.
Thank you, Iyad.
We have
Yes,
one
very
more
good.
question
We have one more
Peter.
question from Peter.
Peter, I have enabled your microphone. You can speak
Peter,
now.
I have enabled your microphone. You can speak now.
Hearing you. Okay, then I would.
Hearing you. Okay, then I will disable it, and I would like to ask you to post the question in the Q&A. Or now, Peter?
Peter, you also have to enable your microphone yourself, I think. So one thing is to enable it,
Yeah.
another thing is to enable it yourself in the top bar.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Okay. My question is also how do face-based actors also relate to the other stakeholders like businesses and governments. Are there any partnerships as well?
Who would like to answer this question?
Who would like
Peter,
to answer this
Peter, can you
question?
repeat that question?
Addressed?
Or to who is this question addressed?
I was asking about partnerships with business and government and face-based actors.
That's probably
Maybe
a
I
good
can
question.
start.
Yeah.
And who is this question addressed to? Matthias?
Well, I can just give a little idea, and then Iyad can maybe add to that. Oh, there's a big echo now on the line, but okay, I'm trying to do this. So what I can say is that there are different preparatory meetings before the actual UNEA starts, and I'm not sure if that goes in the direction of your question, but there will be a lot of opportunities for meetings between FBOs and other actors, including businesses and other civil society organizations during the stakeholder forum. And there's also a lot of opportunity for meetings and discussions during the Science and Policy Forum, which will take place on the weekend right before the UNEA starts. But Iyad, you might want to add to that.
No, definitely, this is excellent. Of course, there is the sorry for the echo from my side. But there is also the Innovation Expo where private sector companies will be providing their innovative solutions, and partnerships might be organized between whatever organization from the private sector and the other stakeholders and governments. So there will be plenty of opportunities for cooperation and partnerships. In fact, faith-based community is coming into the process, but other partnerships have been discussed over the past at least year and a half to come to UNEA with concrete partnership proposal and agreements. So this would be an opening for such a thing to take place in the next environment assembly sessions.
Yes. Okay. Then we have another question from Day.
Okay. Then we have another question from Day.
A question for Chris and Matthias.
He has asked a
What
question for
opportunities
Chris
will
and
there be for
Matthias.
environmental
What opportunities will there be
content
for
at the
environmental
WA Global Assembly in
sustainability
Jakarta
content at the
November
WA Global
2019?
Assembly in Jakarta in November
Dave, thanks for
2019?
Yes.
Can I answer that question?
Chris, do you want to?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll take that. Hey, Dave, thanks for answering the question. I went pretty quickly through my slide deck, and the last slide I forgot to mention. And that last slide was the WEA Global Assembly, which is November 7 to 13 in Jakarta. And we're developing the content for that right now. There's opportunity for sure, and it's a really important opportunity for us to have input into that. And it comes, as you know, on the back of last year's MICA Global Triennial in the Philippines. And so we actually have an opportunity to build on that with the evangelical community gathering once again in Jakarta. So we'd love to work with you, Dave, and others regarding that content. So yes, opportunity there. We will work to make that as the best opportunity we possibly can. So please be in contact, and we'll talk about that, Dave.
Maybe I can add to that and propose, as I think there have also been emails going back and forth concerning the WEA Global Assembly and how we can actually put content to that with regards to environmental and sustainability matters. So I propose to actually have a follow-up meeting where we discuss exactly this, and I would like to link it to the question that was asked: what is the most strategic thing that we can do as a group who are going to be at Nairobi? I think that goes beyond the limits of this webinar, as it has more an informative character. But what about linking up after this webinar at some point during this week or next week, where we can further discuss that question? Because Chris, I don't know what your take is on this, but I would really love to discuss this more thoroughly. How can we also engage in common action in Nairobi and to maximize our impact on the ground and not diffuse ourselves in too many different activities and topics? So that's not really an answer to that question, but it's rather a follow-up task that would develop out of it. Is that okay?
I think it should be okay for now. We have a question for Iyad now, but I see that he has some technical difficulties.
Answer the question.
So let's first answer the question whether MICA will be having a meeting in Nairobi. Matthias, do you know this, or Chris?
Aware of a MICA meeting in Nairobi. Chris, do you want to add to that? Have you heard of a MICA meeting in Nairobi?
So I am not hearing you. I heard you, Matthias, and then you got cut off about a MICA meeting. I do know that there is a MICA Africa leaders meeting, not during the UNEA, but I think it's in April, and we'll be attending that because we're looking at doing an urban UN Habitat Urban Thinkers Campus, and in association with that MICA's Leaders African meeting in April.
Okay. I think many people did not hear Matthias' answer. Matthias, would you like to repeat your answer?
I think many people did not hear Matthias' answer. Matthias, would you like to repeat your answer?
Okay, I can do so. So I just said that I'm not aware of a MICA meeting in Nairobi. Thank you.
Question for Iyad.
Okay.
From Manuel.
Right. And then we have a question for Iyad from Manuel, and he asks, what are the strategies to scale up faith-based initiatives? Could you answer this question,
What
please?
are the strategies? Sir, I did not get the whole question.
Can you repeat, please?
Can you repeat, please?
Yeah, the question was, what are the strategies to scale up faith-based initiatives?
Oh, the strategies to scale up the faith for Earth initiative. Is that correct?
Well, the way I understood it is more, what are the strategies of the Faith for Earth initiative to scale up faith-based initiatives, like decentralized faith-based initiatives?
Well, if I understood the question correctly, as I mentioned, we launched global strategy on engaging with faith-based organizations, and the strategy can be found on our website under Faith for Earth, and it lays down the different activities that we are trying to launch with faith-based organizations. So our approach is not to do it ourselves, but to do it in collaboration and partnership with faith-based organizations. I have been receiving a lot of requests from faith-based organizations to tackle the issue of education, faith education and environment, and to launch it at the global level. I probably mentioned in one of my presentations that we are now partnering with the Parliament of World Religion to publish a textbook for universities on faith for Earth, which will tackle all the teachings of all faiths and how they contribute to dealing with contemporary environmental issues. We are working with other organizations trying to establish, for example, online courses on environment, faith. So this is only the environment. I mean the education component. But scaling up as well our work with investment institutions. UNEP actually manages and runs an initiative program called UNEP Finance Initiative, which has over 200 institutions from the financial sector, mainly commercial banks and central banks. So we are trying to scale up this initiative to include faith investment corporations like the Islamic Development Bank, like the Vatican, like the Church of England, and so on. So this is in terms of some of these initiatives. So indeed, the purpose is to scale up by connecting with the faith communities. On probably there were 60 proposed activities under our strategy.
Okay, yes, this was a very good overview, I think. Thank you, Iyad. I had posted in the chat that we will share the link to the website with the participants afterwards. We have one final question from Rachel, but I think we don't have the time to address this very important but also very political question now. This is why I hope for your understanding, Rachel, and maybe you can get in touch with the participants afterwards to discuss this question. So because we are already 30 minutes late, I think we should come to the end and finish our webinar. It was absolutely great to have so many of you here. It was our first webinar, so there were some technical difficulties, but I think we managed quite well. And we hope that you learned a lot and that you got a good overview of the topics that we discussed today. And we will host a webinar again soon. We don't know the topic yet, but we will yes, let you know and hope that you will join us again. And now I would like to say thank you to all and have a great day wherever you are. Bye.
Thanks so much,
Yeah,
everybody,
goodbye.
and
Thank
bye-bye.
you. Thank you.